This is the generation of them that seek his face. This is the generation of them that seek his face.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, bienvenidos here in our congregation, and also those of you that are coming in through our YouTube channel. And we want to thank each and every one of you for coming to Torah Unleashed. My vision is to unleash the Torah. Torah has been bound and shackled, kept in boxes away from the people. And my vision is to bring Torah, just the simple truth of Torah, I guess what I would call is just an outline of Torah, so that little by little, every year, we get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into Torah. So we want to welcome each and every one of you to our uh, 37th Parsha. Now, our Parsha today is Shlach Lecha. These are actually, the word Shlach is actually a one-syllable word. It's not Shelach, it's Shlach. And it means send Lecha, for yourself, another one-syllable word, not two, as in modern Hebrew. Send for yourself. And so let's go to Numbers 13 there, and actually read the first 3 verses there. Yahweh spoke to Moshe, and he said, send out, send for yourself, men, anashim, men, one from each tribe, to make a reconnaissance of the land of Canaan. I am giving to the sons of Israel. Send a leader, a Nasi, from each tribe at Yahweh's bidding. So it means to send for yourself, to send out men, and to send out not only any kind of man, but as we're going to see in a moment, send out generals for yourself. Now, our outline of today's Parsha, every Parsha has an outline, and there's a number of topics today. And again, every year we go through some of them. We don't hit all of them every year, but we'll hit some of them this year. There's 10 of them. The reconnaissance of Canaan, the envoy's report, the rebellion of Israel, the anger of Moses, Yahweh pardons, but he brings discipline. And then the Israelites have an abortive attempt to go back into the land, which Adonai is against. We also have a couple of other mishpatim, the mishpatim of first fruits of bread, and mishpatim echukim of atonement for faults of inadvertence. And then we also have breaking the Sabbath. What happens when you break the Sabbath? Actually, really the importance of Sabbath. And of course, tassels, which are the seats, tassels on our four-cornered garments. So that is the outline of today's study. And let's, first of all, go back to chapter 13. And there, we are told what we would call the first Recon patrol, a reconnaissance of the land. Yahweh directed Moses to choose 12 men who were rulers. Nasi is the word for a ruler. Many times these Nasis are also called Rosh, heads of families, heads of the different tribes. These rulers would be more like generals. Now, those of you who have been in the military, one of the things that our Marine isn't here today, Oh, there he is. I didn't see you over there. But in the Marines, they have what called Recon, right? And this is first Recon, actually. I think these guys were Navy guys, though. But I don't know. Maybe that's why they got in trouble, right? But this is the first Recon patrol. These were 12 generals. Now, when in the military and Marines, or when they send the Army, they send a Recon, and they usually send privates first class, these guys, and maybe a sergeant or so. They send you out. Well, think of this. Adonai did not send privates out. He didn't send private first classes out. He didn't even send sergeants or first lieutenants. He sent generals. He chose 12 generals, one from every tribe, the general of each tribe. They were to spy out the land of Canaan and report back, which is what a recon unit does. And they were to report back. In particular, they were to take notice of the land, the people, the produce, the possibilities of the area. They were to search out to see if there was wood and other necessities. Now, if you see here on the map, way at the bottom, this is where they were, Kadesh Barnea. Now remember, this is about a year and 3 months after leaving Egypt. It took 3 months to get from Egypt to Sinai. On the third month, they got to Sinai. And then they were 1 year in Sinai. And then they left Sinai, and then they came to Kadesh Barnea. And they were encamped over here. And what they were to do is these spies were to go up the central highlands, this green area here. They were to go up to the central highlands and spy out the land. And the 12 of them were to go and look at the land, the produce, everything, and see what it was all about. Now, I'm not sure what kind of patch they had. This might be one of the patches that they used, that they put on their talits. First Force Recon, reconnaissance group. But it was a recon patrol. Now, the 12 spies, these were their names, and each tribe had a general. Each one had a general. For Judah, it was Caleb, Zebulun, Dan. Everyone had a general. Now, I want you to pay close attention to the fifth one. For the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun. Now, it's interesting that Ephraim and Joseph, by the way, of the tribe of Joseph, of Manasseh, Gadi. But Ephraim and Manasseh, two sons of Joseph, Manasseh and Joseph were together. But for the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea. Now, we would use the word Hosea here today, and we do have a book of Hoshea or Hosea in English. But these 12 men were rulers or generals, Nasi, and here's the Hebrew word Nasi, a leader. And I want you to really know that these 12 men, these 12 generals, because what happens next is of importance, and how they act, for generals to act the way they did. Now, one of the most important things is, let's go to Numbers 13:16. After he mentions the names of all the generals, it says, these were the names of the men whom Moses sent out to make a reconnaissance, a first recon of the land. Then Moses gave to Hoshea, son of Nun, the name Yehoshua, or the name Joshua in English. So think of this. He gave the name Vayikra Moshe le Hoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. So he gave the name, Hosea was his name. He was a son of Nun, and Moses called Hoshea Yehoshua. The original name of Joshua was Hoshea. Now Hoshea, here it is in Hebrew, Hoshea, Philipata, means salvation. But Yehoshua means Yahweh, He is salvation. The O there is He. Yeah, and by the way, the name Yahweh and Yah would be a long, but because this is a long O, Yeho, in Hebrew grammar, this declines to a short vowel. So Yehoshua means Yahweh, yeah. Shua is salvation, and the O is Yahweh, He. Yahweh is salvation. So the original name of Joshua was Hoshea. But for some reason, Moses, it doesn't say why Moses did this. It just says that as he was sending these 12 generals out, and of course, we have the person that we've known as Joshua, who was one of the generals of Ephraim, now actually becomes the general of generals, and the whole book of Joshua is where he is actually the top general of the whole army, the whole invasion force into Canaan. But this is something that we really need to have a basic foundation on because of our next introduction. Now, from Yehoshua to Yeshua. Now, Yehoshua means Yah, He is salvation. But Yehoshua is contracted into Yeshua ben Nun after the exile. So around 444 BC, when Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel come back to rebuild the second temple and come back after the 70-year captivity, they spend 70 years in captivity in Babylon. While they were there, one of the interesting things that happens is the name Yehoshua was shortened to Yeshua. It's like during the exile, someone was named William, now they're named Bill. Or someone was named Richard, now they're named Rick. So Yehoshua is the full name. Yeshua is the contracted name. So whenever you see the word Yeshua, and here it is in Hebrew, Yod with a sere, a shin, shuruk vav, and ayin, which is silent, and this is called a furtive patah. Yeshua is used in the second temple period. By the way, never use Yeshua or I don't know where all these guys are coming up with all these strange pronunciation. Yeshua never appears in Scripture at all. You never see this pronunciation. But in Nehemiah 8:17, and check that out, it uses the word Yeshua ben Nun. So from this time on, anyone who was named Yehoshua was called Yeshua, a perfect name contraction. I remember in your own name, just think of your own name. What are the contractions or the ways your name is spelled, how your name is translated or even transliterated? My actual name, Denis, is actually Dionisio, from the Greek Dionysius. So Dionysius, Dionisio in Spanish, Denis with two N's, or I use Denis with one N, or when I was in grade school, there was 3 Denises. The other 2 were menaces, not me. And because, which is Dennis, and so they called me Denny, or sometimes it's called Dion. And there's all kinds of different contractions. Dion is a contraction for Dennis and Dionisio. And so every one of your names in different languages, translating it, transliterating it. When you have a name like Dolores in Spanish means hard labor pains. Now in English, it's just a name. But when you translate it, Dolores means pain. Same thing with Linda. Linda means beautiful. And to many people, it's just a name. Jack, Frank, everyone has a name, whether it's a first name, a surname. They all have a meaning. Many of the meanings are lost. But when it comes to Scripture, especially the name that is above all other names, that at the name of Yeshua, all knees shall bow, all tongues confess, we better know how to pronounce it and why we pronounce it the way we do. Now, in Greek, which are New Testament, the apostolic scriptures come to us in the Greek form. And in Greek, Yeshua becomes Jesus. This is the way we see the word Yeshua in the Greek text, Jesus. And here it is anglicized, Jesus. Now, how do we get Jesus from Yeshua? Well, the Greek has no yod. So they use an iota, an I, because they don't have a Y. So that's where we get the I. And again, the eta there is from the E, and the seta in the Hebrew. The Greek also has no shin, SH sound. They have an S sound, which is, this is what we call the medial sigma in Greek. Greek has no shin. Now, the shuruk, this is a shuruk vav. Sometime before, in the time of, after David, in the kingdom period, they invented some semi-type, they used some of the consonants to act like vowels. And so this is an U. That's not a vav. It's a vav, but it's a shuruk vav. And that is an U sound. It becomes a diphthong U. And the final A in Yeshua, in Greek is feminine. So you can't say Yeshua with an A in Greek feminine. The masculine, you must add a final sigma. Now in Spanish, we have the word Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. Many times in English, nobody's named Jesus. You've never met a Jesus in English, right? But in Spanish, almost everybody has a Jesus in their family. But in Spanish, not only do we have a Jesus, but in Spanish, we have the feminine of Jesus, which is Jesusa. I had a tia Jesusita, we called her. Mi tia Jesusita. My aunt Jesusa. Jesusa. And it's in Spanish, it's perfectly normal, right? It sounds normal, sounds perfect. Jesusa. In Greek, you can't do that. And so what they do is, in transliterating Yeshua to Greek, the Y, E, and then the seta becomes an eta, and becomes a sigma, U, A. So from Yeshua, we transliterate that in Greek as Jesus. Now the Latin is actually Jesus, and you see that I, that Latin I, and the Greek iota. You see this little, like a J, what has become a J symbol. And it's actually an I, but at some point in time, the other little feety going the other way got lost, and it kind of slanted down, and it got another transliteration. Now, every I, every Y, and in some cultures, have you ever heard someone say yo, Y-O, yo soy el pastor, yo? But have you ever heard somebody say, yo es el pastor, yo? And a lot of people, again, it's a natural sound that a Y, or an I in this case, also some people can't pronounce the Y, and it automatically in their tongue becomes a J. Yo. Yo fui. Yo fui. Yo fui. And so, little by little, the Y's became J sounds, and in English, it took off, and so now we have the word Jesus. Now, I want to make sure everybody understands this. In the Septuagint, which is the translation from Hebrew to Greek of the Torah 200 years before Yeshua, 200 years before Yeshua, in what we would call today Septuagint Greek, or what became known in the apostolic writings, the New Testament, as Koine Greek. The word koine from koinos means common. So Koine Greek is common Greek. Well, it turned out that it wasn't the common Greek, it was Septuagint Greek. So they were actually speaking in Yeshua's time the Greek of the Septuagint. And of course, Jesus and Jesus. Now, two things that we need to remember. The word Jesus has nothing to do with Zeus, the false god Zeus. I've heard people say, "Oh, don't say Jesus, or don't say Jesus, because that means hey Zeus." It doesn't. Zeus is with a Z on it. It's different. It's a different words. Doesn't have the same meaning. Also, the word Jesus doesn't mean horse. There's some people going around saying, "Don't call him Jesus because Jesus means horse." It doesn't mean horse. There's some things that in the first century, some graffiti that they started doing that. It is perfectly okay to use the word Jesus. Now, I prefer Yeshua because that's what his mother called him. That's the angel said, "And you shall call his name Yeshua," in his birth language. Now, if you want to use Jesus, it's okay. Don't let anybody say you cannot use Jesus, because Jesus is a perfectly good name in English. Remember, this is a transliteration from the Latin, from the Greek, from the Hebrew. But it's a reasonable transliterations that have come down to us. Not like Yehovah and Yahweh that is totally not a transliteration. But in Yeshua, Jesus is a transliteration of the Latin, of the Greek, of the Hebrew. And make sure I really want to make sure that we all understand this and know this. Well, back to the book of Numbers. So Moses sent out the men, the generals, to reconnoiter the land of Canaan, he says for them to go up the Negev. They're over here at the south at the Bamidbad. Paran. I always have a hard time with that. Paran, and go up. Here's the wilderness of Zin, and they were to go up and reconnoiter the land. And he tells them again what kind of land, the inhabitants, are they strong? Are they weak? Are they few? Are they many? And so they were to go up and bring back some of the country's produce. It was the season of the early grapes, and they went up and reconnoitered the country from the desert of Zin. Here's the wilderness of Zin, or the desert of Zin, to the path of Hamas, up in the northern Galilee area. And now, when they got back from the land of goats and bees, this was the report they gave. We made our way into the country where you sent us. It does indeed flow with milk and honey. Here is what the produce is. And you've probably seen that famous picture, and they even have little figurines if you go to Egypt, with here's a cluster of grapes. And so there was, and a lot of milk, which means goats, a lot of honey, which means bees. And so as far as the land goes, they gave a positive report. But what happens here is verse 25, and they come back to Kadesh at the end of 40 days. So they were gone 40 days. It was a 40-day recon patrol, 40-day recon patrol. And they came back, and they came to Moses and Aaron and the whole community of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They made the report, and yes, everything was good. But verse 28, at the same time, look at the produce. But, he says, at the same time, its inhabitants are a powerful people. The towns are fortified and very big. Yes, we saw the descendants of Anak. The Amalekite holds the Negev, the Hittite, Amorite, Jebusite, the highlands, the Canaanite, the coast, and the banks of the Jordan. And so what they saw there was the sons of Anak. They saw the descendants of Anak, and they saw what they were is the Nephilim. Remember from Genesis 6, there was the Nephilim, the giants. And by the way, the word Nephilim in Hebrew is from the word Naphal, which means to fall. The fallen ones. The actual translation of Nephilim is the fallen ones. But the Septuagint translated that 200 years before Yeshua as gigantes. In fact, in Spanish, we have that same word, gigante. Alguien gigante is a giant. And so it's the Septuagint that uses the term giant, the Nephilim, which in Hebrew actually means the fallen ones. And so what happens is they began to disparage the country. And in verse 32, it says, verse actually 33, yes, we saw giants there, the sons of Anak, descendant of the Nephilim. We felt like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. And so 10 of these men, these 10 guys, 10 of these men disparaged the land. 10 of these men decided, you know what, this is really, we shouldn't go there. Caleb, in verse 30, and of course, him and Joshua wanted to go in, and they disparaged the land. Chapter 14, verse 1. At this, the whole community raised their voices and cried aloud, and the people wailed all that night. And all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole community said, would that we had died in Egypt. And so what we have here is the power of the tongue. The power of the tongue. We have these 12 men that now give a report. Yes, look, here's the produce. Look at all this cluster of grapes. Yes, all that was good. But the people are giants. Their cities are big. They're walled cities. And all of a sudden, the heart of the people. Now think of this. If at this point they would have listened to Joshua and Caleb, instead of these 10 men, and Moses would have said, okay, let's go in and take the land, they would have taken the straight route into the central highlands from what is now Beersheba and going up, and they would have taken the land, and within 2 years they would have been settled in the land. Within 2 years from leaving Egypt. From leaving Egypt, the possibility that in a year and a half, a year, 8 months, 2 years at the max, they would have been settled in the land. Everyone in their tribal allotments that Moses would have done. Moses would have even gone in there to the promised land with them. He would have been in there. But like you hit one domino and all kinds of other dominoes fall. Well, what these guys did is they came with a negative report. They came with oh no, the giants are, and what do the people do? All you have to do is tell 3 or 4 people who will tell 3 or 4 people who, oh, there's giants. Ay, 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 ¿qué pasa? Ay, caramba. Type of a thing. And all of a sudden, fear comes in. Doubt comes in. Unbelief comes in. Worry comes in. And now you have the whole community of Bnei Israel saying, we can't go in there. We should have died in Egypt. At least over there we'd have had, a good funeral and all this. And over here they're gonna eat us up. In fact, what did these 10 guys say? We felt like grasshoppers. We were just, like when you see a grasshopper and you're a giant, you could just step on it. How many grasshoppers, how many ants have you stepped on? They're not a battle for you. And so what we have here is a situation where 10 men, 10 of the 12, of course, Joshua, Caleb and Joshua, or Yehoshua, the son of Nun, from Judah and Ephraim. And by the way, it's interesting that Judah and Ephraim are the two that are for going up into and taking the land. Of course, Moses sent them out to reconnaissance the land. They came back with a good report. If the rest of them would have agreed with them, vámonos, let's go in and take the land. They could have done it. They could have done it. That's why many times we need to keep, even though we have doubts, fears, even though we have unbelief, we need to keep that to ourselves. Bring it to Adonai. Bring it to his lap and say, what these 10 should have done is, come through Moses and said, Moses, pray for us. And we need to open up and pray and ask Adonai, I have unbelief. Help my unbelief. We need sometimes when we don't trust, By the way, even in prayer, say you get a heartache and, oh, I'm going to die and, this is a heart attack. No, what we need to do is come to someone and say, you know what, can you pray for me? I have this pain and I'm starting to think that it's I'm going to get a heart attack. And through someone's faith, through someone's standing with us, we'll build our faith. We could build others' faith. When someone is falling, when someone's faith is going down, we got to come in and build. Joshua and Caleb were trying to build no, we could do it. But these 12 overcame them. And these 10, now the people listened to them, and they refused to enter the land. They start grumbling, rebellion, mutiny. In fact, they were even thinking, watch what it says in verse 3. Why does Yahweh bring us to this land? Only to have us fall by the sword, and our wives, our young children, seized as booty? Should we not do better to go back to Egypt? And they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and go back to Egypt. Now from Kadesh Barnea, there is a caravan route that goes to Egypt. Today, from Kadesh Barnea to Egypt would be 18-hour car drive today. They could have gone back to Egypt in a week, 2-week period or so. But they wanted to mutiny. They wanted to appoint a leader. They were wanting to get rid of Moshe and Aaron, and probably Caleb and Yehoshua. And so what happened in verse 5, before the whole Kehillah of the sons of Israel, by the word there is Kahal, the whole community, the whole Kehillah, assembly of the sons of Israel, Moses and Aaron fell down on the ground. Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, 2 of those who had reconnoitered the country, tore their garments and said to the entire community, the land we went to reconnoiter is a good land, excellent land. If Yahweh is pleased with us, he will lead us into the land and give it to us. Remember, Yahweh wants to give this land to Israel. Why? Because he promised it to Abraham. He promised it to Isaac. He promised it to Yaakov. It is your land. He promised it to Moses. You're going into the promised land. I have chosen you. Yes, Adonai if Adonai is pleased with us. What would make Adonai not be pleased with us? Unbelief, doubt, worry. He's not pleased with that. It's faith that pleases Adonai. And so because of the 10, not only because of the 10, but because of the whole Kehillah of the children of Israel, Bnei Israel, Adonai was not pleased. And in verse 10, Adonai, his anger, the glory of Yahweh appeared on the tent of meeting to all Bnei Israel. And by the way, when it says the glory of Yahweh, that's the kavod. That's the word kavod. A lot of people are, one of the things that we have to do is do not add to Torah, do not take away. We're told that a couple of times in Torah. Do not add, do not take away. Yeah, today all kinds of people are adding and taking away. A lot of people are using the word Shekinah or the Shekinah over here. There is no such word as Shekinah in the Hebrew. The word comes from Shechin, which means a place, a dwelling place. But it has nothing to do with the glory, the kavod of Adonai, the kavod, his glory, his manifest presence. His manifest presence, the kavod was seen here. And he calls them, and he wants to make, let me put it this way, Adonai wants to make a deal with Moses. And Adonai is willing to destroy all the sons of Israel, and with Moses and Aaron as a remnant, restart. And of course, Moses says, no, the people even in Egypt are going to know about this, and it's not going to happen. So Moses stands in the gap here. And instead of Adonai bringing, Moses comes with a humble heart to Adonai, speaks with him, cara a cara, face to face, panay al panay, and Adonai relents. He comes with and says, Moses, yes, and Yahweh said in verse 20-21, I forgive them as you ask. I forgive them as you ask. Not as you tell me, as you ask. Remember, never tell Adonai anything. A lot of people are always telling Adonai, I want this. No, we don't tell Adonai. We ask. And Adonai listened as he stood in the gap. And Adonai did forgive. I forgive him. But as I live, and as the kavod of Yahweh fills the earth, of all the men who have seen my glory and the signs that I worked in Egypt and in the wilderness, who have put me to the test 10 times already. Think of it. 10 times already they had put Adonai to the test. They had put Adonai to the test. And so what Adonai does here is he now, I forgive him, but you could see the anger of Yahweh come here. And because of that, he says that not one that has seen my kavod, my glory, shall live. So of everybody that left Egypt, all the men, and we're talking about the men, of all the men that have left Egypt, not one shall enter the land. Everyone that has seen my glory in deliverance, in crossing the Yam Suf, the Red Sea, in all the miracles, the quails, the water, every miracle. They saw the glory on Mount Sinai. They heard the voice. They saw what Adonai, if you've seen his glory, if you've seen his miracles, and what a powerful Elohim we have, and yet throw that away? The discipline is, you will not live. You will not enter the land, and you will die in the wilderness. Not only that, but he says, tomorrow you're about to go into the wilderness again in the direction of the Sea of Suf, in direction of the Red Sea, and now for the next 40 years, 1 year. In fact, let me read that for you. That would be in verse 34. For 40 days you reconnoitered the land. Each day shall count for a year. For 40 years you shall hear the burden of your sin. You shall bear the burden of your sins, and you shall learn what it means to reject me. So a year per day. So for 40 days of reconnoitering the land, 1 year for each day of the reconnoitering, you are going to be wandering, going around in circles. Now think of it They could have right now said, okay, let's make plan. Let's go into the land. Let's take the land. We could take it. And they would have taken it because Yahweh would have been with them. But now, instead of being in the land within the next month or so, they're not going to get there until 40 years. I, Yahweh, verse 35, have spoken. This is how I will deal with this perverse community that conspired against me here in this wilderness. To the last man they shall die. The next generation, though, will enter the land. The new generation, the sons and grandsons of these men that conspired against Adonai, the second generation shall go in. The men whom Moshe had sent to reconnoiter the land, who on their return had incited the whole community of Israel to grumble against Yahweh by disparaging it, these men who had disparaged the land were all struck dead before Yahweh. So the 10 men, the 10 generals, now the IDF has 10 less generals. The army of Israel has 10 less generals, because not only did all the men that disparaged and conspired, they will die in the next 40 years, but the 10 men that brought a discouraging report, they instantly died before Adonai. Of course, a lot of people don't like to hear that stuff. In fact, it was Marcion in about the year 140 of the Common Era, the guy who coined the terms Old Testament and New Testament. He thought that the God of the Old Testament was a bad, mean God, and the God of the New Testament is a loving God. Law, grace. And so because of this, but this just teaches us the holiness, the set-apartness of Adonai. And this gave to Israel that idea of not only holiness, but obedience. And obedience is better than sacrifice. Adonai wants our obedience, and he tests our obedience as he did here. Now, one of the things that we have here, of the men, verse 38, of the men who had gone to reconnoiter the land, only Joshua, Yehoshua, Ben Nun, and Caleb, Ben Yefuneh remained alive. And they were the only two that entered the land of those 12. Of course, they have a reverse thinking. They attempt to make things right. They attempt to go and retake the land, take the land. And of course, they had to abort. Can't right or wrong in this case. So from this time on, from verse 45, the end of chapter 14, to chapter 20, verse 1, is 40 years wandering. Now, what's interesting, we don't know what happened in those 40 years. You know, most people think that everything from Exodus to Deuteronomy is the 40 years. No. Exodus to Numbers 13 is a year and a few months. And now there's 40 years, and in 20, all of a sudden, we are ready to cross into the Jordan. We're on the land of Moab, but nobody knows what happens for 40 years. The 40-year wandering is, in a sense, silence. Yeah, some things happen here while they're there, but as far as where they went, what they did, it's just pretty much unknown. Of course, chapter 15, there's some sacrifice stuff there. Verse 17, the first fruits, the bekurim of the bread. Let's go down to chapter 15, verse 32. Here's an incident about the Sabbath that we mentioned. I did want to mention this. While the sons of Israel were in the wilderness, a man was caught gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who caught him gathering wood brought him to Moses, Aaron, and the whole community. He was kept in custody because the penalty he should undergo had not yet been fixed. Yahweh said to Moses, the man must be put to death. The whole community must stone him outside the camp. The whole community took him outside the camp and stoned him till he was dead, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And so one of the things that we have here is the idea that this man broke the Sabbath. Now, since Adonai gave us the Sabbath, now remember, the Sabbath is not a Jewish thing. Get Sabbath out of Jewishness. Get it out of Jewishness. It has nothing to do with Jewishness. The Sabbath is a mankind. Yeshua said something very important. The Sabbath was made for mankind, anthropos. Anthropos, mankind, was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for mankind. Well, what's interesting is that the word Adam, is not only the name of the first man, Adam and Eve, but the name Adam, which has cognates in the term Edom, which is red, dam, blood. Adamah, the word Adamah is from the soil of the Adamah, from the soil of the earth. The Adamah, from dam also, from red blood. Man, Adam, is a soil man, a red man, a man from the soil, from the ground. And this is anthropos, this is mankind. But the Sabbath was given to Adam on the sixth day. Think of it. Adam was created on the sixth day. Let's say the sixth day, it begins at sundown, and between the two evenings, Adam was created by Adonai. He took from the side, built a woman, Eve, and on the sixth day, at the end of the sixth day, Adam and Eve had been brought together by Adonai. Adonai performed the first wedding. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, be cleaved to his wife, two shall become echad, the first marriage. And that was the sixth day. But the next day, the Sabbath, Adam and Eve began their life together, and man began life on the Sabbath. It was the seventh day. And Adonai gave to me, the Sabbath is your servant. The Sabbath was made for mankind. It serves us by giving us rest, by allowing us, in Leviticus 23, 3 there, the Sabbath, there's two things that are done in the Sabbath. Only two things are done in the Sabbath. Rest and Mikra Kodesh, sacred assembly. We're at sacred assembly here. From sundown last night, you were resting. When you go home till sundown, you're going to rest. You have rest, sacred assembly, rest. And that was it from the time of Adam. Adam was a Sabbath keeper. Adonai gave him the Sabbath. The Sabbath wasn't given to the Jews. It wasn't even given to Moses. It was given to Adam. In fact, a lot of people don't understand this, but our father Abraham was a Sabbath keeper. It actually says, we are told that Adam kept my Torah. Well, wait a second. The Torah wasn't given to Moses. Yeah, Moses wrote it down. But from Adam's time, from Noah's time, just like Noah kept kosher, he knew what kosher was. He knew what clean and unclean was from the beginning. And he took one couple of the unclean, 7 couples of the clean, not only for sacrifice, which he did of the clean only, it says, but after the flood, mankind was allowed to eat of the clean animals. Abraham kept kosher. He kept Sabbath. Even before the 10 Commandments, honor the Sabbath day, remember. What did he say, remember? No, it doesn't say, remember, don't have idols. It doesn't say, remember, don't commit adultery. It doesn't say, remember, don't steal. But why does it say, remember the Sabbath? Remember is because it had been forgotten from the beginning. By the way, with Moses, the Sabbath actually began before they got to Sinai. The Sabbath actually came before they got to Sinai. And they started practicing Sabbath before the commandment to remember the Sabbath. They were keeping Sabbath. So Sabbath is a big thing to Adonai. Might not be a big thing to especially many people that are coming into Messianic from Christianity, because even though people say, well, Sunday is our Sabbath. No, it's not. You might have a Sabbath hour or a Sabbath 45 minutes, but you don't have a Sabbath day. Because after church on Sunday, where are you going to go? You're going to go to Village Inn. You're going to go here. You're going to go, let's stop at Walmart on the way home. No, that's not the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a big thing to Adonai. In fact, it's so big, it's a capital punishment. And here a man was caught. This guy knew what the Sabbath was. He'd been told. He'd been practicing Sabbath. But yet one day, on the 6th day, he forgot to go gas up his car. So now he's caught gassing up his car, or forgot to go chop wood, and now he's chopping wood. Sorry about that. And so now it's cold. Now he wants some wood. And what happens is he wants a cook. He wants some wood, and he's caught. And the penalty was stoning. You say, that's too harsh. Think of it. That's a harsh punishment. But that probably the first and last time somebody went out to go get wood. But, the wise man learns from his mistakes. His family, I'm pretty sure his kids now learn. The wiser man learns from somebody else's mistakes. So everyone should learn from this man's mistake. And even today, every one of us should learn from here. And the last section here on our Parsha is on the tassels, the tzitzit. Again, speak to the Israelites and tell them for all generations to come, for all generations to come, for all generations, to put tassels. And the word tassel, you see the word up there, tzitzit. It's T-Z-I, T-Z-I-T, tzitzit. And here is a fresco on in Egypt, and here is a Hebrew, and it's interesting that in pre-Exodus, the Hebrews in Egyptian attire are wearing fringes. Again, they're wearing fringes on their clothing. And Adonai says that from now on, you will put a tassel on the hems of their clothes, and work a violet thread into the tassel at the hem. You will thus have a tassel or a tzitzit, and the side of it will remind you of all Yahweh's orders and how you are to put them into practice and not follow the dictates of your own heart and eyes, which have led you to be unfaithful. This will remind you of all my orders, all my mishpatim, hukim. Put them into practice, and you will be consecrated. You will be holy to your Elohim. I, Yahweh, your Elohim, have brought you out of Egypt to be your Elohim. I, Yahweh, your Elohim. And so this is a command that Adonai has given. Now, what's interesting is that Deuteronomy 22:12, which Deuteronomy is just second law or second instruction in the Greek, you shall make yourself tassels on the four corners of your garment with which you cover yourself. Now, all ancient people had a garment or an outer clothing, an outer wear. And today, people use the term talit, but here is my talit, and again, it has tassels, tzitzit. Now, these tassels here are, because of the culture today, rabbinical tassels. The tassels in the corners at the hem were actually these. And on these, there was a blue thread. And they were short, they were small. Of course, from the time of Yeshua, the longer tassels started being used. In fact, watch what it's, let's look at some of the apostolic writings in the book of Matthew. We also have Yeshua wearing an outward garment, a four-cornered garment with the tassels. And a woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe, the hem of his cloak. And they implored him that they might touch the fringe of his cloak. And as many as touched it were healed. Mark, after hearing about Yeshua, again, the same one in Mark, she came in the crowd behind him and touched his cloak. Wherever he entered, village or cities or countryside, they were laying the sick in the marketplaces and imploring him that they might touch the fringe of his cloak, and as many as touched it were cured. Again, in Luke, came up behind him, touched the fringe of his cloak, and immediately her hemorrhage stopped. So Yeshua wore, as it says in Deuteronomy, a cloak, and all cloaks were four-cornered, what my people might call a blanket, pancho, a sarape, and all ancient peoples in every culture had these. And so the command is not to wear a talit, a covering. The word talit means to cover. Tal means to cover. the command is not to wear a talit. The command is to put seats, fringes on your four-cornered garment, and that would set you apart. But the most important thing is that these are reminders. These are reminders of keeping Torah. These are reminders of, and the fringe of blue is a reminder of Adonai's presence. Of course, today, nobody wears sarapes, and nobody wears a four-cornered garment. And I put them on my jackets because my outward jacket, I took it off, is my outer covering, so I have my seats on my jacket. Now, a lot of people put them in their pants today. Men put them in their pants, and so these are symbols. Now, one of the questions that has always been asked after this is, well, can women wear tzitzit? Well, it doesn't say that women can or can't. All the mishpatim and hukim are for Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel. So if we take that sons of Israel as the male, then the tzitzit has been considered a male clothing. Of course, think of this idea. Today, people ask, can women wear pants? And some churches do not allow women to wear pants. Pants are men's clothes, and women should wear dresses. But in ancient times, men wore dresses. Men wore long cloaks. But yet there was a difference between a man's clothing and a woman's clothing, even though they were pretty much the same. But in those days, the outward covering, because the men were more out in the elements and they were heavier, women have always traditionally been more finer wear than men's clothing have been. So you could actually tell what a man's clothing is from a woman's clothing. Over here, I teach that since it says the Bnei Israel, that the wearing of a talit and tzitzits are for the men of the congregation. Of course, other Messianic congregations teach differently. Now, since we just finished Shavuot, our reading from the apostolic writings for today is Acts 2:42, the results of Pentecost. After Pentecost, it says there in Acts 2:42, these remained faithful to the teaching of the apostles, to the brotherhood, to the breaking of the bread, and to the prayers. Well, what's interesting, if we get this verse and break it down, there are 4 areas that they remain faithful, 4 areas of faithfulness for new believers. If you're a new believer, this is the 4 areas of faithfulness. And we won't take too much time on this, but we'll continue on this throughout the week also. The doctrine of the apostles. The apostles taught the scriptures from a messianic perspective. Remember, Yeshua called 12 men to follow him, 12 men to be his disciples. Yeshua, for 3.5 years, discipled 12 men. Of course, one of them left, but these 11 men, he took after his resurrection to Mount Arbela, there on the Sea of Galilee, and he ordains 11 men, go into the whole world, make disciples of all nations. So these 11 disciples now become apostello, now are called sent ones. Apostello means to send out. So now these students are ordained and sent out to make disciples now, to teach others, to teach the nations, the Goyim, the Gentiles, all the nations, and included Goy Israel, the nation of Israel, the Torah, but from Yeshua's perspective, from what he taught them. You have heard it said, but I say. So now, from a messianic perspective, remember, Yeshua did not come to abolish the Torah and the prophets. He came to bring them to their fulfillment. So the fulfillment of the Torah and the prophets, these 11 men, then 12, then, Paul, and later on, were now to go out and teach the scriptures. They taught the scriptures. They taught Torah. They taught the prophets. That's what they used. In fact, in the whole apostolic writings, Yeshua himself and the apostles, where do they quote from? They quote from the scriptures. They quote from Torah. They quote from the Tanakh. And they're also to remain faithful to the brotherhood. The brotherhood here in the Greek means koinonia, is the word koinonia. Now, the word koinonia is from koinos, common. It means the fellowship. It means the community, the common group. You guys are this koinonia. This is our commonness. This is our fellowship. This is our community. We get together. And in Jerusalem, there was many communities. And in fact, in the time of Yeshua, there was many brotherhoods, many koinonias, many groups. Every rabbi, they would meet in the temple in fellowships in what would be called a chavurah. So it just means common, community, our commonness. So they remain faithful to hearing what the apostles had to say from Yeshua's perspective. They remain common together to the breaking of the bread. Now, the breaking of the bread does not mean the Mass. It does not mean Holy Communion. It does not mean the Lord's Supper. There's no such thing as what Christianity has come up with in the Catholic and or Protestant. Remember, the Protestant Holy Communion, Lord's Supper, all that is just a reworking of the Catholic one, which really comes from not Passover. It doesn't come from that. But the breaking of the bread meant the agape meals. In Jude 10 and 2 Peter, what is it, 2 Peter 2:13, it talks about people from the outside, mischievous people coming into the agape meals of the believers, what we call oneg, the community meals. In fact, the New Jerusalem translated the community meals, the agape meals. The word agape means love. In fact, one of the translations, I think the King James says, the love feast. They come into your love feasts, which were the fellowshipping of the believers in their homes. After they taught, they had community meals together. And of course, the prayers are the temple rituals. Twice a day at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. was the time to pray. And so from a Hebraic perspective, from a Mosaic perspective, twice a day, everybody went to the temple in Jerusalem. If you were in Jerusalem, you would go. We see Peter and John going up to the temple for the prayers. So think of this. They remained faithful to the temple rituals. They remained faithful to temple practice. In fact, it was at the temple that Paul preached the Pentecost sermon. It wasn't in the upper room. We saw that it wasn't. It was in the temple. It was in the temple where, again, he gets busted. Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. In the name of Yeshua of Nazareth, rise up and walk. And so the early believers, these 3,000 were baptized, were immersed in the mikvot right outside on the southern steps of the Temple Mount today. And they remained faithful to the teaching of the apostles, their doctrine, to the brotherhood, the koinonia, the agape meals, the onegs, and the prayers, the temple rituals. In fact, the temple rituals included sacrifice. If you were there for the prayers at 9 and 3, a sacrifice would take place, and you were in cahoots with that because you were there. And so they remained faithful, and we'll talk more about this later on. Well, let's go ahead and stand before Adonai. I want to thank each and every one of you, especially those of you that are coming in through our YouTube channel and Facebook. Hopefully, you could come and join us if you are ever in Albuquerque. Join us for our study. Yevarechecha Yahweh va'ish merecha. Ayir Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panav elecha vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Thank you. Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or torahunleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en torahunleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.